This is the Canon R50, and it's one of the most underrated cameras on the market. Now, this camera came out in 2023, so it's a couple of years old, but I'm really surprised that more people haven't picked this camera up. My experience with it is I brought it as a camera for my fiance for a trip we were going on, and I wanted to get her a camera that could do wildlife photography. This camera does 15 frames a second in electronic shutter and 12 frames a second in mechanical shutter. I say mechanical, it's actually first curtain shutter, which is completely fine, and what I tend to use on my R7 as well. I'm actually shooting with the R7 today, and I'm shooting in HDR PQ mode as well. The light keeps changing, so we have to be aware of that. Now, why do I think this camera is such a powerful tool? Well, when I got it, I didn't expect much of it, to be honest with you. I know that I wanted to get her a camera that could do wildlife photography, and part of that was I wanted a viewfinder as well. I really do not like this new trend of these smaller cameras coming out without the viewfinder. If you're just getting into photography and you're looking for your first camera, get a viewfinder. Now, a lot of people are used to composing shots with their phone, and that's fine, but honestly, when you start using a viewfinder, it cuts off any distractions and it just helps you focus. You get a much better experience. Then my typical self, when I started messing with this camera and going through all the menus as I like to do, I just quickly found that this is a really, really powerful camera. Now, I won't talk about every single mode inside the camera because it is aimed at creators and there are a lot of creator specific modes, but in my opinion, they're kind of novel. But what wasn't novel was the fact that for photo, it had those really high burst modes, albeit quite a short buffer. However, it does seem to clear the buffer very quickly. And it has the HDR PQ mode. So I just said I'm shooting in the R7 in HDR PQ. Now, the R7 also has C-Log 3. I really don't like C-Log 3. I find it extremely difficult to deal with, but HDR PQ will give you a wide color gamut, and it's much easier to work with, and it's much easier as well to sort of clean up. In fact, it's nowhere near as noisy as C-Log 3. So HDR PQ, as the name suggests, is a HDR mode. And like I said, it will shoot in a wider color gamut, giving you more sort of dynamic range and protecting the highlights even more. I think that is so useful, and I was so chuffed to find that in the camera. Now, on top of that, you also have your mic input. It is disappointing to see you can't plug your headphones in as well, but having the mic input is really, really exciting to see. I would like to start seeing that even these smaller cameras having some sort of headphone input. I mean, we should be on Bluetooth headphones by now, surely. I think it's really important for anybody who is getting into this type of industry, possibly content creators or filmmakers. You need to be able to monitor your audio to know that your sound is good. And if you can't do that, you could be crippling yourself in the field and not realizing until you get back and watch your footage at home, which I've done before, and it is not ideal. I think cameras have come on such a far way now. This reminds me of one of my first cameras, a Canon 100D, and that had a video mode in, and the video quality was terrible. It was 1080p, but it was really mushy. Now, I've tested this a little bit and I think it's really impressive. And when you shoot in HDR PQ, you're actually shooting in 10-bit, meaning you're gonna have much more latitude to grade that footage afterwards. This is very exciting to see. So you can shoot 4K in up to 30 frames per second in HDR PQ, meaning you're getting professional video quality. So for most coming up content creators, you don't really need to shoot in anything more than 24, 25 or 30p. So that would be completely fine. However, you can shoot up to 120 frames per second in full HD. So you've got another option there. You will lose the sound recording if you shoot in that mode though, as far as I'm aware. But for social media, that should be completely fine. Some of the downsides with this camera that I found is that it will overheat. And when we brought it on our holiday, I put a white case on it to help disperse the sun, which actually helped quite a lot. It didn't seem to take too long to get back to shooting again, but you do want to be aware of that. If you're thinking of using this as a backup camera to your sort of A camera, so for me it would be a backup to my R7, then you want to be aware that the camera is prone to overheating. But because of that, I've actually bought a fan for the back of the camera to help negate that. And that should apply air onto the back of the camera and keep it cool and, fingers crossed, prevent it from overheating. Now, as you can see, I've currently got the 10 to 18mm lens on there. Now, Canon do quite a few RFS lenses, but I've got to say I don't think the build quality is as good as the older DSLR lenses. Saying that, I do love this 10-18. I brought it around Bath with me, and I was taking some street photography, and I absolutely love it. It's fantastic, and I've used it on professional shoots as well. But some of the other lenses, I've got like a 55-210, which is an f7.1 at the long end. A similar lens on the DSLR was a 6.3 on the long end, I believe. I will again put a little graphic here. However, this is where things got really interesting. And this is why I've been talking all video about potentially using this as a backup camera if you're a professional, or if you're looking for a budget conscious, capable camera to use as a professional. Because my philosophy is, if you are a professional, it doesn't matter what camera you get in your hands, the camera is a professional camera by virtue of it being in your hands. I mean, maybe we stop at like those toy cameras, but you know, for the most part. So this cool thing that I'm talking about is, of course, finally Canon relenting a little bit and allowing Sigma to produce lenses for the RF mount. Now, unfortunately, this still doesn't include full frame, but it does include APS-C, and that really opens up your options. I honestly recommend, I know a lot of the world talks about full frame, but honestly, again, I have a confidence about using Micro Four Thirds, APS-C and full frame. Having used all of them, I know the workarounds, and it's really not much of a compromise at all. And now we have those Sigma lenses, including the 10-18 f2.8, the 18-50 f2.8, and a whole bunch of prime lenses. I now can see myself using these cameras in a professional capacity with confidence. Now, of course, when you're doing that, you do want to take into account equivalence, not because you're trying to match full frame necessarily. For me, it's more about understanding that a smaller sensor is going to push the sensor harder, producing more noise. So the faster lenses you can get, the cleaner your footage is going to be. Now, those prime lenses I was talking about are f1.4, which is a depth of field equivalence of around f2 to f2.2, I think. But now we have those f1.4 lenses with the f2.2 equivalent. We are getting similar results to a full frame camera, and I think that is excellent. If you're going to be doing professional portraiture, this is a great time to get into this mount, because we do have these very budget conscious cameras and these very inexpensive Sigma lenses that do incredible results. So who is this camera for? I wouldn't recommend it if you are a full-on professional. I think you'd be very brave to get this camera because there are some limitations. Not only the headphone jack, but also it's a single memory card slot. This is one of the fundamental things for me. I need to have dual memory card slots recording photos or video at the same time, because I've had 5 cards fail on me in my 15 years. You also need to be aware that with the overheating, you're going to have to commit to getting a fan for it. Again, it's not expensive, but with that fan, there are other things you're going to have to consider as well. It lasts around an hour. I've still yet to test it, and I'll have a follow-up video with it. And it means you wouldn't be able to close the screen either. However, thanks to the low price versus the incredible powerful performance of this camera and the Canon R7, you could now get, say, a Canon R7 which does do dual recording, which does have a headphone input and all the bells and whistles, and use this as a really capable second camera. If you're a creator who's not necessarily a photographer or a videographer, you have some sort of interest and you're just looking for a decent camera, again, I think this is a fantastic choice. I'm not 100% sure if you can use it as a webcam. I'm pretty sure you can, but even if you couldn't, it's as simple as attaching a HDMI video card. So you'd have a micro HDMI out, which is what this is, which is another sort of minor negative point. You'd have a micro HDMI to the video card, which goes into your USB port, and hey presto, you can now use this camera as a webcam. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, it's absolutely freezing, and because of that, I forgot to mention a few things. So I'm in the car, I've got the heating on, I don't know if you can hear that, and there are a few other things you should be wary of with this camera as well. So number one, it only has 1 memory card slot. Number 2, it's ergonomically speaking a tiny camera. If you've got small hands, it might be okay, but if you've got sort of medium, big hands, the grip is not the best. It's quite small. Then on top of that, it uses these LPE17 batteries. They're very small. It seems to do a pretty good job with the power on the Canon R50, but they don't last as long as some of the full frame cameras with the LPE6NH batteries or the newer ones. But they are also a lot less expensive to buy. I think they're around £45 versus around £120 for the other type of batteries. Now, on top of that, we also want to consider that there is only one main dial on that camera as well. This is completely fine. It's pretty easy to work around, but if you're used to using pro level cameras and you get this as a backup, it might alienate you at first, but honestly, the customization there is really good. Now, on customization as well, another bonus of this camera, which I was really surprised to see, is the fact that you can actually customize one of the modes in there. It doesn't have custom dials on the buttons, but in the video menu, you can save your settings to a custom mode. So I've got all of mine set up in terms of video specs. So I've got HDR PQ, and I've got all my relevant settings there. So anytime I go to that mode, it's always going to be how I like it set up, which is really, really handy. Some other neat little features are it does have a built-in flash, although this is something I personally wouldn't use. It does have Canon's more advanced hot shoe mount as well, so you could connect microphones to the top of that and other accessories. But yeah, I think this is such an incredible camera. It's got incredible burst rates, powerful video modes, and it is so cheap compared to everything else out there. It's an absolute joy to use, and obviously it's tiny as well. If you've enjoyed this video, then hit the like. Let me know in the comments if you've been using this camera yourself, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've got more videos on the way. I'll catch you all next time. See ya.